Well, I did it. I am officially an Ironman. Undeniable. So I got to the half Ironman distance and I was like, it just doesn't feel right to even mention the word Ironman unless I've completed a full distance Ironman. And I tell you, it was worth it. Insanely difficult. You'll hear a few stories today where you're like, wow, you almost died. That's crazy. And it's true. I did face some pretty sketchy situations with my health. Obviously, I've got a few added challenges. I have type 1 diabetes. I have some heart issues, and it's just a number of things that could have gone wrong and did. But today, I want to share with you my very detailed full race recap of Ironman California 2024, the day I became an Ironman. Now, as I mentioned, I do have some other health considerations, and those played a massive role in how I trained and how I raced, the strategies, my time. In fact, I'm not going to make any excuses. That's not what this is, but because of some health issues and challenges I ran into, my time was about an hour and a half longer than it was supposed to be, maybe even an hour 45, which means had everything gone according to plan, my coach and I had calculated I should come in, if it was a perfect day, right? Perfect day, I should have come in under 12 hours. And I came in at 13:43, which I'm still happy with, but a little bit frustrating when I know that my fitness was ready for it, but my health conditions kind of got in the way a little bit. But we play with the cards that we are dealt, and I accept that. So without any further ado, let's get into our race recap. The day I became an Ironman. Well, I'll tell you, it leads up to a challenge where the night before my Ironman, I got a whole 2 hours of sleep. And the 2 hours of sleep that I got were broken. It wasn't great. I was in bed on time, did everything right the night before, relaxed, and hit the pillow and was just wide awake. And I wasn't stressed, at least I didn't think I was, but I just could not fall asleep. And usually I fall asleep in an instant. So that was frustrating. But getting up, an hour and a half to 2 hours of sleep before you go spend 13 hours and 43 minutes on a race course, not ideal, but definitely has an impact on my type 1 diabetes as well. So lack of sleep leads to higher cortisol, more insulin resistance, and means that my medication needs are completely different than what I had planned for. So the race plan had to change from the start. Given insulin in the morning, and I ended up not getting to eat a full breakfast, though admittedly it was also my decision to not eat a full breakfast, just introducing more complications with, not complications, but difficulties in the plan, more variables at play. To dose insulin for a meal that would still be active medication during the swim, and I could run into a hypoglycemic episode and drown, right? So I was like, forget that. I want peace of mind over fuel. So instead of having a full breakfast, I chose peace of mind. My entire breakfast was 2 dates, which comes to a grand total of 9 carbs, which, not ideal. It's like 38 calories or something, 40 calories. So unfortunately started the race in basically a fasted state. Right before though, we meeting up with my buddy Mason, who was running this race with me. Both of us, it was our first ever Ironman. We got separated in transition one when we were setting up all of our bike bag, run bag, personal needs bags. And, that was the end of it. We never saw each other again until the marathon portion of the Ironman. So thinking you're going to go to the starting line with a buddy who you can talk to and talk each other down from your nerves, that was unfortunate. You're like, oh, nope, all alone again. It's just me and my own race. But in a way, it was also kind of nice because it allowed me to have my own race, right? And to be really just a battle of me against me. And I kind of enjoyed that in a weird way. Now, the swim start, we'd take buses to the swim start, and that added a new layer of challenge as well, because we had to make sure that you got on the bus, and beyond that, just getting everything in place before heading over, because once you get on the bus, you can't go back. So making sure that everything is all set. But, we hop on the bus, which they're way too hot, by the way. I've got half my wetsuit on and we're all just dripping sweat in the bus because it was freezing outside, but the bus driver wanted it to be warm. So all the athletes are just prying the windows open. But we get to the swim start, they're giving instructions over the loudspeakers, and I was there an hour early, so an hour later, just kind of hanging out, stretching, warm-ups. My blood sugars are creeping up and up and up a little bit because of the stress. So if you guys don't know, stress, adrenaline, cortisol, all these things can impact blood sugars negatively. And so a lot of different factors that I'm balancing. But finally get to the start. I start my race with an RX bar, which is about 200 calories. So that serves as my breakfast. Still not great, right? But it's something. And for me, that's purely to balance my blood sugars, because when you're exercising, you're burning glucose. I'm adding glucose that's going to absorb slowly because of proteins and fats to match what I need during the swim. Now, the Sacramento River and the American River obviously are going to give you a little current assist. So it was nice that we had a current assist, because for me, I have to take off my insulin pump when I swim. So that means there's less total time that I'm disconnected from the medication that keeps me alive. So that's actually one of the reasons why I chose this race, in addition to it being in my home state, right? I live in San Diego, California. So Sacramento, while it is far, it's in the same state. So we get into the swim. Water is pleasant enough. It's cold, but it's not too bad. You can't really feel the current though, which was a bummer. You swim out and around a buoy and then head down, but it was very choppy to the point where I am swallowing what felt like gallons of water. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm glad this isn't salt water, but this is tough. Like, my stomach's actually starting to feel full from water. I'm like, this is not good, right? And as with any triathlon race, I got punched in the nose. I got elbowed in the mouth. I got kicked in the side, right? So that's just kind of part of the deal. And thankfully, when I got punched in the nose, my goggles didn't come off. That's happened before, and that's unfortunate. But when I got kicked in my side, that's actually where my insulin pump site was. And that'll come into play on the bike section. I'll tell you all about that. But when the rivers joined, there's a segment where you have to swim kind of against, perpendicular, but it feels like you're going against the current when you join in, and immediately water temperature just plummets and my whole body was just done. Like, holy cow, it's freezing cold. And by this point, I had already started facing my mental demons. Actually, my father-in-law asked me, how many times did you want to quit? And I said I was never going to quit. That was never part of the equation. But I did question my sanity multiple times. The whole time in the swim, I'm like, this is stupid. I hate this. This is the worst thing ever. What the heck was I thinking? Like, I'm going to finish it, but I am not going to be happy about it. So I'm just mad the whole swim. Like, this is dumb. I'm choking on water. I just got punched in the face, and now it's freezing cold. But we got through. I'm shaking. I can't feel my hands, and I'm more prone to hypothermia just for whatever reason. So get out of the swim violently shaking, right? Surprise, surprise, as happens with most Ironman races, I'm bordering on hypothermia. My entire body is convulsing, right? I can't hold anything because my hands are shaking so bad. So we get to the tent for changing, and I felt a little bit of heat. I could tell they put heaters somewhere in there. So I just stayed in the tent for like 20 minutes and really took my time getting dressed. Thankfully, I had packed these hand warmers, and I cracked 4 packs open. So I'm just like sitting there with my hands in the warmers while I'm trying to get dressed, get my helmet on for the bike. I've also got leg sleeves and arm sleeves that act as sun protection, but also wind protection. So it keeps me just a little bit warmer. And these are considerations I have to make for this, bordering on hypothermia. And we're just sitting there for the longest transition of all time. And there's 2 reasons for that. One, hypothermic, I need to make sure I'm okay before I head out on the bike, because the wind chill could make things worse. And they did have a warming bus 10 miles into the bike, but I'd rather just start strong. But 2, because I was shaking so violently from being cold, I couldn't connect my insulin pump properly, and it's a touch screen. So if your hands, imagine you're shaking violently, right? You have to hit very specific buttons to deliver medication or insulin. If I deliver the wrong amount, it could kill me. like actually. And so I chose to take a longer transition to make sure I got to a point where my hands were at least just a little bit shaky and not violently shaking, so that I could deliver the appropriate amount of insulin confidently and then take off on the bike, because I have to deliver what's otherwise considered kind of a dangerous dose of insulin in order to consume food. So the reason for this, I've been disconnected from my medication for the entirety of the swim, right? I need to make up for that, deliver extra, and dose insulin for the food that I'm about to consume. As a type 1 diabetic, I can't survive without insulin, and I can't eat food without insulin. So there's this crazy thing. But if you take too much insulin, especially during exercise, it can lead into a hypoglycemic episode where I could pass out and die. So it's like, oh my gosh, there's just so many things to balance, right? And that's just the nature, again, of the cards that I've been dealt. But I've got this hypothermia and a potential hypoglycemic event that I have to watch out for. And of course, balancing against a hyperglycemic event or a high blood sugar. So if I just eat sugar and don't take enough insulin, high blood sugar could put me into DKA or diabetic ketoacidosis. And again, race is over, go to the hospital. So there's a lot of these events where it's like, if this happens, you're done. You don't get to race. So I have to be very cautious with what strategies I use. And unfortunately, getting onto the bike, I noticed my insulin wasn't working. And so over the course of the first hour, I delivered an absurd amount of insulin, enough to kill me. And it was very calculated, the decisions that I was making. I actually work with type 1 diabetics. I'm an educator, master fitness trainer and nutritionist, and I research type 1 diabetes, and I use myself as the experiment, right? And so using my knowledge, I was able to come up with adaptations to the plan. But truth be told, this was a dangerous decision to make for me. And I knew I was going to finish the race one way or another, but I recognized as well that the decisions that I made were so aggressive with my medication that it really only gave me two options. One, this works and I finish the race, or two, this doesn't work and I end up in the hospital. And I share that for two reasons. One, just to share how complicated it can be to do endurance athletic events with type 1 diabetes, but two, my sheer determination to finish this. I was like, either I finish the race or I'm going to end up in the hospital. Like, the hospital is the only thing that's going to stop me from crossing that finish line. And that's just kind of how I operate. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And I told thousands of people that I would be crossing that finish line. So gosh darn it, I'm going to cross that finish line, or I'm going to have a really good reason as to why I didn't, right? And I found out later, like, I think over 100 people were tracking me on the Ironman app. You guys are awesome. Really appreciate that. Glad that I finished, because that would have been so hard to not finish with that many people watching. But just a lot of type 1 diabetics that reached out and shared that I had inspired them to do a 5K or a half marathon, or even just to take better care of themselves. I mean, I was tearing up afterwards. It was really special seeing all you guys, and just the impact that my journey has had on you. So thank you for reaching out if you did. So getting into that, the bike portion, blood sugars were high. I couldn't take in glucose, which, as we know, that's a big issue in an Ironman race. If you don't take in enough nutrition during the bike, you will fail during the marathon. You're not going to cross the finish line. So again, had to make the decision of an aggressive medication dose so that I could eat food, so that I could finish. But if I took too much insulin, it would put me out of the race as well. So both sides, it's like walking along the peak, the crest line of a mountain, the ridge line, and on either side is sure death. And every step you're like, I hope this works. I hope this is stable. I hope I can continue just navigating highs and lows. But finally, after an hour of just extra medication, and medication, I mean insulin, right? Finally, my blood sugar started to come down and I was able to eat food, and then they really started to come down. I was like, shoot, this is the other side of the issue. I'm going to have a low blood sugar, hypoglycemia, right? Was able to offset that by eating a ton of food, but a ton of food is not what I typically trained with. So now there's a new problem. Right, so every problem that I solve, it introduces a new problem. So the second half of the bike, I am stuffing my face the whole time to compensate for the overcompensation of insulin that I gave. So I gave too much insulin because I had to make it work, but now there's too much and I have to eat more glucose than I'm used to, because if I don't, I'll have a low blood sugar because the medication that I took. So complications arise, whatever, you take care of it. I had to stop a few times just to take care of diabetes related stuff. Unfortunately, lost about 12 minutes on the bike just from that. And the first hour I had to take it easy because I thought it might be a repeat of my previous race where I didn't get to eat food because of blood sugar issues. And on that one, it was a half Ironman. I had to conserve energy because I knew I couldn't consume energy or calories. So finished the bike. I had trained with between 50 and 70 grams of carbs per hour. I was consuming in excess of 80 carbs per hour. My stomach was very full. So getting to the run, smooth transition, felt great, ready to go. And the first 8 miles went smooth. And blood sugars this whole time, by the way, at the end of this video, if you're interested in the blood sugar specifics, I actually made a video for our company's channel, FTF Warrior, where I went over the exact insulin dosing, decisions that I made, temporary basals, bolus insulin given, the exact blood sugars that I was at between each transition, during the bike, swim, run, all that. So if you're into that, I'll link that up at the end of the video. You can go check out that channel. That one's completely geared towards type 1 diabetes. But for the sake of this video, you might not care about that kind of stuff. It might not even make sense. So we won't touch on it too much. What I will say is it's something that keeps me busy mentally. Like a lot of people wonder, like, Matt, I did like a 70-mile indoor trainer ride not too long ago. How did you do that? That's crazy. It took like 5 hours. It's like, well, the whole time I'm running calculations in my head. Too much sugar, not enough insulin. What are my blood sugars at? So the whole time mentally I'm busy. So I think that's part of the reason I can just ride staring at a wall for 5 hours and like not lose my mind. I got enough to worry about. But again, getting into the run. At the start of it, felt great. Was on track. Nutrition was back on point. I went from 80 an hour to about 50 to 60 grams of carbs per hour, which is right around where I like to be for runs. Got caffeine, electrolytes, amino acids. Everything is balanced perfect. Hydration's on point. I'm like, yes, I'm on track. Everything is as it should be. I'm going to crush this marathon. And truth be told, I've never run a marathon before, so I had no idea what I was in for. When I did my first half Ironman, I had never run a half marathon before. So a lot of this stuff is me just saying yes to opportunities, and I'm like, let's see how this goes. Right? I'll prepare as much as I can, but like, let's do it. And that's just kind of how I approach life. We say yes to everything. It's so much more fun that way. But this is my first marathon ever, and it's on the back end of a full distance Ironman. So miles 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm just crushing it mile after mile, feeling good, on perfect pace for what I should be for a sub 4 hour marathon. And about 7 miles in, 8 miles in, my stomach flips. That wasn't a good snap. There we go. My stomach flipped and it started fighting me super hard to the point where I couldn't take in food, couldn't take in salt, couldn't take in water. It was like, I'm going to vomit. This sucks. And the issue with that is that my blood sugars were at a very healthy range, which means they were right next to a low blood sugar. So I was keeping them perfect, like non-diabetic levels, which is typically what I aim for. But if you throw up, you've got nothing left to digest, right? No more glucose is getting stored, but you're still running a marathon, so you're burning glucose. And as somebody who's insulin dependent, that means my blood sugars will consistently go lower and lower and lower until they're in a dangerous spot. And again, you guessed it, I won't be able to finish the race. So I make the decision to completely shut off my insulin pump because I know I can't eat anything at this point. And blood sugar still stayed right there. I can't eat, so I can't take in glucose, but I'm still running, so I'm burning glucose. So I keep blood sugar stable there. The issue that diabetics can run into is called euglycemic DKA, which means your blood sugars look perfect, but your blood is turning acidic because there's no insulin in your system. So I'm like, okay, keeping that in the back of my head. Right, so if I start vomiting, it's probably because I have diabetic ketoacidosis. If I go too long without insulin, that's likely to happen. So again, there's a different side of the puzzle. I can't finish the race. So there's just so many factors that are like, if I take one wrong step in either direction, done. not going to finish the race. You're going to end up in the hospital, right? Which, I mean, that's kind of how life is with type 1 diabetes. It's like you're always balancing the lows and the highs and like trying not to die. It's kind of crazy. And we are our own best doctors because we have to manage it ourselves, and the rules change daily. So however much insulin I took the day before, completely different today. Just wild. Anyways. So mile 8, I start walking because the running motion is going to make me throw up. So I'm like, all right, I have to walk for at least a quarter mile. Just let my stomach settle, right? And my mom saw me walking at this point. My family was there, whole family. Well, not my siblings, but my parents, my in-laws, my wife, my daughter. And my mom caught me first and was like, "You're walking. What's wrong? Are you okay?" And I was like, my stomach's fighting me so hard. I can't eat, can't drink. And so she's like, "We'll pray for you." And if you guys have been following me for a while, you know I'm a Christian. My whole family is Christian. So faith plays a large role in my journey with Ironman. And so with each of these scary decisions, like when I took a ton of insulin on the bike ride, it was like, okay, trust fall. I'm going to take all this insulin and then just start praying. Like, God, please keep me safe. Don't let me die. I just want to finish this race, right? And so faith does play a big role in my journey with this. And I mean, call it a miracle, call it chance, call it whatever you want. I'm calling it an answer to prayer. 2 minutes after my mom started praying and texted out our whole family and friends list to start praying. It was like 50 people she asked. She's like, "Everybody pray for Matt." 2 minutes later, my stomach started feeling better. Not to the point where I could continue eating gels and all that crap. It's kind of yucky when you think about it. But good enough that I could run again, at least jog, right? So I couldn't take in food, but I could get my pace back up. So I wasn't on track for my sub 4-hour marathon anymore, unfortunately, but I was able to at least do a run and walk for the rest of the race. And throughout that process, I mean, just more issues that arise as anything does, right? Just cascading problems. But because I can't eat and I can't drink, I know I'm on borrowed time. I know that within a few miles, if I don't get something in soon, my body is going to start failing me, which it did, right? It started getting closer and closer to cramps and injuries. Well, the blisters, that's just part of running a marathon, I think. But I know that the longer I go without food and taking carbs in, the more likely I am to get injured in the race. And so I'm kind of panicking a little bit, like, okay, I have to conserve energy, really map out my pacing. I have to change some things so that I don't get injured. And over the course of the next few miles, was able to reintroduce a few bites of banana, chips, grapes, just like seeing what went down and settled. And then when it got dark, I was told about this, but thought it was silly. They bring out chicken broth. That was the best thing ever. Like, I've never had chicken broth during a run before, so I was nervous. I was like, this is going to be risky, right? Never try anything new on race day. But I was like, everybody's just raving about chicken broth as a runner. So I was like, all right, it's hot, liquid. I'm cold because it's dark and chilly now. I'll give it a shot. So I took a sip of it and just immediately my stomach took it and I was like, sweet. Okay, at the very least I can have chicken broth, get some sodium in me, right? Get the electrolytes back in action. And that chicken broth reset my system and I started able to get some bananas in. So over the course of the next 10 miles, I was able to consume about 10 bananas. And that certainly kept me going. Some potassium as well, but also some carbohydrates. And felt good about my targets again. But by this point, my body was teetering on breakdown. I could feel all my muscles just ready to snap, right? My hamstrings were tightening up, my calves were locked out, my ankles felt like they wanted to give out. And I knew if I even tripped over a stick, I'd be done. Right. For some reason, that was my first thought. I was like, if I trip over anything, having to activate, I can't snap right now, activate my muscles in a split second, I'd tear something because they were all just right on the edge. And so this whole time, you know, of course, as any Ironman athlete will tell you, there were some dark thoughts, right? And it was surprising. The dark corners that I went to in my mind. You know, something I forgot to mention, actually, I got punched and kicked in the swim. I almost crashed on the bike. Me and another gentleman, I was passing him because I was flying. I felt so good. I was going like 21, 22 miles an hour. So good, which unfortunately just balanced out to like 17 and a half total because I had to stop for 12 minutes. Anyways, we collided. So as I'm passing, he didn't look to see if somebody was passing him, and he tried to pass somebody else, and we collided going 21 miles an hour. And praise God, our pedals didn't lock up. We just clanged and then bounced off of each other. Nobody crashed. I continued going faster. I'm going to be real. I flew by that guy. But I was like, here's the hard part. I look back and I go, oh, sorry about that. I was like, why did I apologize? It's 100% his fault. So if you're watching this, dude who crashed into me, you didn't look where you were going, all right? Be careful, because we almost took out each other and would have been done for the race. We probably would have taken out like 10 people. We were in a group of riders, or a peloton, as I'm told it's called. I literally just found out about that being called a peloton. Never knew that's what you call a group of riders. Found that out like 3 months ago. Embarrassing a little bit, but you learn something new every day. Anyways, during the run, the first 8 miles, I was goofing off. I don't know if you've seen the Office episode where Andy is like drafting behind other runners when they're jogging, right? I did that. I was so cocky before my stomach had issues that I was like joking with other runners, like drafting, and oh man. I saw the cameraman literally jumped in the air and did a heel click because I thought it would be a funny picture. Yeah, we'll put that up on the screen maybe. And then of course, 8 miles to about 17 miles was me just fighting my stomach. And then 17 to 26.2 was me fighting some mental demons, right? It was dark by this point. My body was shutting down. I knew I was going to cross the finish line, but part of me was like, what, by midnight? Like this is really hard. And a couple of things that got me through that. One, I realized I didn't know why I was really doing Ironman until I was in the middle of it. Everybody tells you need to discover your why. That the why is what's going to carry you. And I was like, I don't know why I'm doing this. Other than I said yes to it. It sounded like a good challenge. But in the midst of it, I realized, number one for me, my daughter, she is almost 3 years old at the time of recording this, and just amazing. In line with my daughter, of course, is my wife as well. Doing it for them, where I want to be the kind of dad and to be the kind of husband that follows through on what he says, that it doesn't quit when it gets hard, but also is someone that they can brag about. I want my daughter to be able to go around to her friends and be like, I'm proud of who my daddy is, right? And of course, extra bragging rights. She gets to go tell people her daddy is an Ironman. Oh, love that. But really, I want them to know that they can count on me. And I think that part of that is me proving to myself and to them that no matter how hard things get, I will continue to endure, right? I will finish the race. So a big part of it was my daughter and my wife. Number two was what we call my Renegade Warriors. So actually you probably see in one of those boxes behind me, it says Renegade Warriors. That's what a lot of my clients call themselves. So type 1 diabetics generally refer to themselves as warriors. My clients refer to themselves, as do I, as Renegade Warriors, because we think differently and we expect different outcomes, right? Most type 1 diabetics are told don't exercise at all. And here I am saying, well, I'm just going to go do an Ironman, right? And granted, it was dangerous. Number of times that I was a little sketched out by what I had to do just to keep going in the race. But I did it, right? We think differently. We expect different outcomes. We look for ways to thrive with diabetes and not just survive. So I wanted to be an example, a shining light to my other Renegade Warriors that these things are possible with type 1 diabetes. It just requires the right plan and the ability to adapt to the situation. So number two motivator was my Renegade Warriors. And then number three was my ego. I'm going to be completely transparent. I wanted to be undeniable. I heard a long time ago that the Ironman race was the world's single most difficult single day endurance event. It's the hardest thing you can do as a human that is a single day event. This does not take into consideration multiple day events, ultra marathons that last 6 days, any of that kind of stuff, like the Moab 240. Sheesh. But as far as single day endurance events go, Ironman is the most difficult in the world. So if I've accomplished that, I, to myself, am undeniable, right? And that's what I wanted to earn. I wanted to earn that title with myself to show myself that I can complete hard things, like really hard things. And so that one was for me. Now, getting through the run, those dark corners of my mind were largely surrounding risks that I was taking with diabetes. And again, I knew I was going to finish, but I didn't know how. I imagined I would crawl across the finish line if that's what it took, but I didn't know exactly how I was going to finish, and that was a little scary to me. But there was just so many voices popping up in my head, like, if these things go wrong, it might not just be the end of the race, it could be the end of your life, right? And those were the voices, those were some of the dark thoughts that I had. And choosing to push forward in the midst of that was admittedly a little bit reckless, but it was all very calculated, right? And I'm an expert in my field in blood sugar management, so I knew what to do, but that still doesn't take away all of the risks. I knew there were some risks involved that I chose to take that probably not the wisest thing to do as a dad and as a husband. I say that just because I really don't want people to think lightly of like, oh, type 1 diabetes isn't that bad. It's like, that was pretty serious. There are moments in there where it got real, and my heart dropped a little bit. I was like, whoa, that was a close one. Oh, we still got 5 hours to go. I hope I don't have any more close ones like that. Oh, there's another close one, wild stuff. But throughout the run, spending a lot of time with myself mentally, and this I think is pretty common among Ironman athletes, you really get to know who you are at your core. And I ran into a lot of challenges with diabetes, with thankfully nothing with my heart. I've had some heart issues in the past, but my stomach, my body, I've got some old injuries that started to creep back up. And when you spend that much time with yourself, you get to know who you are, and I am really proud to say that I like who I am at my core. I found that every challenge that arose almost instantaneously, let's see if I can do it. Yeah, there we go. Almost instantaneously, I found the silver lining. I found an escape route from the pain, from the mental burdens, from fear. Anytime something negative would pop up, my brain, almost as a knee-jerk reaction, would provide a positive response, a silver lining to the situation. And I'm really excited about that because growing up, I was actually diagnosed with depression as a kid. And throughout my life, I've had some ins and outs with depression. There were a few times where it got pretty serious and I battled with suicidal ideation. And this is even semi-recently. Like, I was married at this point. My wife heard me talking about wishing I wasn't here anymore, and having some chats with me to make sure I wasn't going to do anything permanent, if you know what I mean. So the fact that I've been able to train my brain or retrain my brain to seek positive responses to the negative experiences in life is really exciting and promising. So if you're somebody that experiences dark thoughts on a more regular basis than you'd like, and I'm not a therapist or I don't have any expertise in this realm, just personal experience, but I'd like to serve as an example that it doesn't have to stay that way and it doesn't have to just be how it is. It's taken a lot of work. And in fact, that whole row of books on the top and the second shelf as well, those are mindset books. They've taken me a lot further than I expected them to. But prayer as well. And my mom, when I was diagnosed with depression and suicidal ideation as a child, my mom said she spent a lot of time praying for me and just being available as a parent. can't imagine what they've gone through when I was having some hard times. So experiencing those moments in my head again, to be pulled back down to the deep depths of negative emotion, dark thoughts, and on top of that, be in dangerous situations that only exacerbate the darkness, right? To be able to respond to that with positivity was very encouraging. And on top of that, obviously I mentioned I was saying prayers the whole time, asking God, begging God to get me through this race safely. There was a moment, I think it was like mile 21, 22, where I heard someone singing loudly right behind me. And I looked back and there was this woman, local, who was wearing headphones on her bike and was just, like scream singing, but she had a really beautiful voice. So it wasn't like bad scream singing praises to God, like worship songs. And I made eye contact and was just like, yes, thank you. And it was such a beautiful thing because I could feel the presence of God in that race. And a joke comes to mind. Something like, that's just the runner's high, but 100% it was God. I told my parents after the race, I got myself to the Ironman. God carried me through it. So I did all the training. I got myself there. I was ready for it. But just the immense amount of challenges that came up during that race, God got me through it. And that it was just a beautiful experience. Now, coming into the final stretch, the last 4 miles. So mile 22, I was walking, and my family saw me walking. Wasn't proud of that, but they cheered me on. I picked it up, and I slow jogged past them until I got around the corner, and I walked again. It's like, I can't, man. Everything hurts so freaking bad, right? Like, my body is literally shutting down. Blood sugars at this point, my insulin pump had been turned off for hours. I was pushing the limits, probably, of diabetic ketoacidosis. So again, threading the needle of needing to go to a hospital. And at mile 23, made a decision to call on what I've studied as an alter ego, right? So if you heard of a book called The Alter Ego Effect, I think that the author's name is Todd something. Really great concept where you can create different versions of yourself to show up when you need them, right? So I called on really just the depths of my endurance athleticism. Was like, all right, we got to get to the end of this race without walking. You can do it. And the reason is because I knew that I was coming up on 14 hours. I was like, I want to break 14 hours. I got to get in under 14 hours because 13 looks so much cooler. And that's really what it was, just an ego thing, right? But I was like, I'm going to run, and I will not stop running, no matter how bad it hurts, no matter how difficult blood sugars are to handle. No matter what comes up, I will continue to run until I cross that finish line. And through immense pain, and even though I felt like I was sprinting, I'm pretty sure it was a pretty slow pace. I was able to achieve a negative split, which means you got faster towards the end of the race, and finish at 13 hours, 43 minutes. Crossed the finish line, rang the bell for my first Ironman ever. I threw my arms out. I was flying down the red carpet runway, crossed the finish line, and just a flood of emotions. I can't even begin to describe it. Pain was gone. I couldn't really walk, right? But the pain was gone because I was just overwhelmed with pride and joy and gratitude. And I would say the biggest emotion I felt throughout the whole thing was gratitude. Gratitude that I have a body and a mind that are willing to endure and embrace this challenge, this immense challenge. Gratitude for my family and friends that, honestly gave up a lot to allow me to train. I've got a toddler. I had to ask a lot of favors for babysitting so that I could go train for 5 to 11 hours in a day. Like, hey, can you watch Brooklyn? I got to go take off on a 100-mile bike ride and then go run 15 miles or whatever it was. I did 10 miles. They all made sacrifices for me as well. Gratitude for the community that supports me in type 1 diabetes. Gratitude for God for being there in the darkest of times for me. And gratitude for the opportunity to complete an Ironman. That's something I never even considered. growing up. At the beginning of my training, I couldn't even run a half of a mile without doubling over out of breath. So, I mean, in the following couple of days, blood sugars were challenging. That night, I didn't get to go to sleep until 3 o'clock in the morning because of blood sugars. Had some really bad issues. Did push almost DKA. Had to test for ketones, and it's a whole thing. Would have had to go to the hospital if that were the case. But I did it. Diabetes did not hold me back. Neither did my other conditions. Well, I don't really have any other conditions, but other risk factors, right? And was able to mark off this milestone. So good news too, fully recovered now. I'm about a week out, and I would say I was hobbling for 24 hours, and by 48 hours I was about 90% recovered. Felt really good. I was surprised. And that was the fitness level that carried me there, right? So I've got a few more half Ironmans, but I made a promise that I wouldn't do any more full Ironmans just yet. It's time to get back in the family realm, and I got to run my business and catch up with that and make sure my clients are all taken care of. But overall, absolutely incredible experience. I'm blessed to have been able to participate in that, to learn about the endurance athletics community. People are amazing, and we'll see what's next. I've got some ideas, but if you've made it this far in the video, I'd love to know what you've done after completing something hard, after marking off a big milestone. It's a weird feeling to have it be done and to not know what's next, but it's also exciting in a weird way. So thanks for sticking around. I know this was a long one, but I also wanted to make a full race report just for myself as well, to recount a lot of these stories so that I don't forget. So appreciate you. If you like this kind of stuff, feel free to stick around, hit subscribe, and maybe I'll see you in the next one. Maybe I'll see you on course if I ever get back out there again. Hope you have a great rest of your day. We'll see you.